think it is recording officially. Hello, everyone. I hope you had a fantastic spring break. I am enjoying it myself. I mean, I still, some degree, I feel like it still feels like a spring break. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me fooling myself to not think that I'm busy. But it's good to see some of you. And for the others, it's always lovely to see your letters. I just, for this moment, I just start to see if I can figure out your names by your letters. Yeah, my name is Ferdinando Castro Gonzalez, and I will be helping you host your conversations because it's mostly yours and mine, hopefully. So we're trying to explore a new topic, a new theme, in fact, for a whole month, which is society. If you even know me a tiny bit, you will know that I'm extremely excited about this topic because I love everything that associates with society. I'm hoping to get some insight on your cultures and your societies, your traditions, you as an individual, so maybe we can have a better assessment of how Dallas College is really faring in that regard. I am assuming that Professor Mansi has some announcements, so I will yield my floor to him, and then I will explain the house rules.
Hey, thanks, Fernando. Yeah, just a few announcements up top here, and then again, I'll repeat these at the end of the meeting as well. First and foremost, you can find us on social media. Again, the Dallas College Philosophy Club, we're on Instagram. We post multiple times a week. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, where we have all of our history of recordings posted up there, as well as some other fun stuff. Some faculty-related stuff, an interview with Professor Benton and myself from many years ago, a lot of fun. So yeah, check us out on YouTube, as well as all the other social media platforms. If you'd like to get onto our weekly email list, you can shoot Ferdinando your email address, either private message, or you could leave it here in the chat, and we'll add you to the email address, rather to the email list. We send out about 1 to 2 a week, depending on what we have going on. But I do have one other major announcement. Yeah, and we're going to kind of break it here right now, in fact. The Dallas College Philosophy Undergraduate Conference is happening 5 weeks from today. So Tuesday, April 27th, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., we'll be having our conference. If you're curious as to what our conference is or what it entails, again, I refer you back to our YouTube channel. We have last semester's conference posted up there, so you can see how it kind of goes, what the process is, what the procedure is. It's very fun, but it's also, again, it's very, I suppose, eye-opening. You get to hear from students from other campuses, other classes, as well as other colleges around Texas. So if you'd like to participate, go to the files section of this Teams page, and you'll see a file that says call for submissions, CFS, Dallas College Philosophy Undergraduate Student Conference, Spring 2021. If you'd like to propose a possible presentation, feel free to do so. Again, 5 weeks from today. All right. Having said that, I'll once again turn it over to Fernando. I'm excited about the new monthly theme, again, society. Today's topic, society's identity. It's going to be very, I guess, very open-ended. I'm curious to hear from y'all in a way similar to Fernando, what y'all understand societies to be. But I really kind of intend this question to be that broad. What is a society? How would you define a society, even in the most general of terms? But all right, thanks. That's all I got for now.
Thank you. And again, if you want more information regarding this conference, again, it's easy to some degree. All you really want to need to do is be able to speak. So that's all you need, really. But okay, I'm gonna just start. All right, that's cool. So sorry, somebody's sharing something with me. All right, so here we go. So yes, for me, society. Let's start just kicking off, and then I just do the other introductions or announcements. All right. So why it is for me very important to define this right from the get-go? Because sometimes we could argue like, do we just by being born in a geographical position, do we belong to specific societies? That's my first wonder because, for instance, and this is very personal to myself. Oh, right, the house rules. If you want to speak, please do like a exclamation mark on the chat. Just do like this, boop, And if you can see the chat, and Nancy already started it. I just following as an example. That way we're able to follow up an order, and we don't miss anything that you may want to say. But okay, in my instance, I was born in Venezuela, and I remember that even like it took me years to get out of my country. However, my accent was different, so people always thought that I was from Colombia or Brazil. So that was weird. And my way of interacting with people always make them feel like I was not born in my own country. So for me, that was like, and I always felt like I was not part of the society, but I was not member of any other society. So does the lack of relation or the lack of like being able to connect with some people in your society, does disconnect you from your society, or is it part as a whole? And we can also go into the whole aspect of we hardly ever going to be finding just one society. You can be like a country, then you have like states and like cities. So like it gets messy because it goes from the very macro to the very like micro. So what like can one individual be just one individual society? Is that a thing? So I do want to explore your thoughts in that area. And since Mansi, you are the first one, I will then yield your floor to you.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I actually set mine just as like a reminder to go over it. But
Oh,
no, but that's okay. I'll build on something you said because I like it, especially that last question about can you have a society of one? Is that a contradiction of terms in some way? You know, again, is that oxymoronic? Uh, Another question I think that kind of relates to that is again, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about identity last semester for topics, and so it's kind of circling back around now this semester. Um, how do we identify, or how would we again define society as say different from a community? Or I guess that's a question. Is a society and a community, are they synonymous terms? Or can you have a community that isn't really a society? Again, just trying to narrow in on what a society is and what makes it distinct from other forms of social gatherings, I suppose.
hmm. I mean, in my case, um, I believe I tend to use the term loosely when it comes to society, maybe because of my English barrier or whatnot. Um, but I do believe that you don't necessarily belong to a community just by existing. But I think society does allow it to be vague. I think like a society just kind of like, at least in my view, is kind of like you have this space and whichever is in here belongs to a society. But part of the community seems to be kind of like you can be outside of this society and still belong to a certain specific type of community. Because for me, community, at least in my perception of community, it permits the possibility for somebody who just kind of like believe in an idea. Let's say that you are somebody who really think that maybe a Monster Energy drink should be the new system that overrule anything, and you are the only person who believe it maybe in this country, but then you have and other countries who say like, you know what? Yes, yeah, we, and so the community, you're not in the same geographical space, where you have the same belief. So you are all a community of those who think that energy monster, whatever, should be the one ruling over nations. So like I think community is not just about a space, it's more over like also like who believes something in common. While society I think is conformed by different views, different like thinking, different practices, different tradition, because it's kind of like everything that goes into the whole geographical area is adding to the society. While community is not necessarily like that. I mean, sometimes it is, but it's not necessarily like that. At least that's how I see it. Uh, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, uh, happy to respond. It's because I think you're making an excellent point about this consideration of actual physical space. Um, for example, again, it does seem as though to be part of a society includes geographical borders, things along these lines. But of course, that kind of begs the question: well, what constitutes a geographical border? It seems like there might be some sort of governmental component to a society that makes it a society. Maybe the government is what allows a society that consists of several different communities to cohere. But again, to your initial point, you could be part of a community, it seems, without necessarily occupying a particular physical space. Uh, Now, I want to kind of throw this other question at you related to that last point. Um, are communities something to which you belong, to which one belongs, through choice or through, I suppose one might say, necessity, uh, things beyond our control, or is it some combination of both? Because again, we could say, well, we're all part of the support Monster Energy community, right? And we're a community. It doesn't matter where we're from or what language we speak. We all what unites us is just this, as you said, this belief, this support in this case of Monster Energy, and that seems like a choice we're making. But what if Monster Energy wants to institute a sort of executive board or a sort of government for Monster Energy Society? Then it becomes less of a more of a society. And then on the other side, it's like, well, are there some communities that you can't help but belong to, which are, again, aren't necessarily governed like a society, but maybe, again, I'm thinking of something like I'm part of the Italian American community because my ancestors are Italian. They moved here. Again, I'm third generation. I live in America. So I'm part of that community, whether I like it or not. Whereas the Monster Energy community, I could choose to be a part of it or not. And does that kind of comparison work for society?
Yeah, and I see your point. I remember one of your classes when you were talking regarding. I am bad with names. Well, it was a philosopher who is like very into. Uh, oh my God, I don't remember his name. That's so sad. I will remember. I know who. Well, anyways, I'm just gonna focus on the idea. The idea is like we set these communities precisely because if we let ourselves be loose, then like everybody's just against everyone and chaos reigns. The power, like the stronger wins, the weaker just dies, and it's just for us to set some ground rules. So the best analogy is like, yeah, maybe some people they don't even speak the same language, they cannot understand each other, but they are able to understand that they need each other to survive. So even though they do not speak the same language, they will try to communicate and form like some sort of like need to based community so they can sustain themselves long enough until they can find something different, and then the community may be dissolved with time. So it seems, at least from this conversation that we do have, like when it comes to like those needs, communities, and those who are kind of like you're just bound into it. Like it just happened. I also have some roots Italians. I just think I'm instead of third, I'm fourth generation really. But I mean, I'm not American, so I guess like we're half community related. I just make a word and I'm gonna go with it. So but the point is like I do see like and this is something that Ravi is texting. So she's asking whether a society I see it as a geographical kind of a deal and community is belief driven. I think community allows to be belief driven, while society not necessarily. But community could just be also geographical. Because maybe it is a community of those who think that Austin should be not Austin, but Ferdinando. You see, so I again I will make a motion, maybe like a resolution to change the city of Maine's name for my name. That would be awesome. The capital of Texas, name Ferdinando. So I think if you're not in Austin, you can't participate in those activities. So yeah, I think like that community will be geographical, but I do think that there's need something more. Not always, but you can choose maybe to be there. At least that's how I see it so far. Maybe further exploration, I prove myself to be wrong, but that's why we're talking about it. So we can like improve. Uh, but anyways. Isidora, don't worry about being late. You are always in the right time, as long as you always talk, of course. You can always just text, and I'm gonna read the mine if you are a little bit more in the shy spectrum. Uh, but yeah, now, like let's play in this scenario. let's assume like, okay, I'm here, I'm an international student, so I was not born here, but I want to be a member of the Society of the United States. But the way I grew up with, I don't have the same values. And no matter how hard I can try, my history won't allow me to be full American, at least from maybe those who are born in here. So the intention means that you're going to be accepted. And do you require to be accepted to be a member of a community, even though you share the same belief and practices? Like, I don't know if that's a question that is being clear enough to be understood. Because I do believe like we have many people trying to come to this country so they can have the benefits of being in this community, but the community sometimes just tell you no, and sometimes you are a member of the community with them telling you no. So you're kind of like a rogue in that scenario. So do you have to be accepted into the community to belong to that community, despite you having the same beliefs, the same practices, and the same desire to support the community? Like, can we then discard them from this idea like, yeah, you belong even though everyone is telling you no? Mm, so how can we really assess such a thing? uh, I can always just ask myself. I can respond myself. I do this all the time. So okay, so there you go, Mansi. I see that you are next.
Let me respond. Because again, you have a lot to say, so I think we're all trying to process it. A lot of good stuff. I like some of the things you said at the beginning. I wonder if you can't kind of even look at it, almost from the opposite lens, but still nonetheless illustrating your point. So, can you be part of a community without wanting to be? Would be like the inverse way of looking at it, right? So again, maybe going back to my example, I'm Italian American, but maybe I wish I weren't, and I don't go to any Italian American events. I don't take pride in it, something like that. Again, this is not true. This is just hypothetical. So it's like is my membership, quote unquote, in a community specifically granted through these sort of conditions that I have no choice in the matter of, or are there more conditions that require some sort of again, mutual recognition of one's participation in a community? And I think you can also extrapolate that to societies too. But I think the community question is so interesting because there does certainly seem to be a lack of, again, governance in communities. Communities seem much more loose. Well, okay, let's take one step back. What about a family? So again, your family, for instance, is that a society? I mean, there's governments, there are rules, there's an authoritative hierarchy, perhaps especially when you were younger. Is it a community? Do you get a choice in belonging to that community? Or again, what if you're adopted? So you have a sort of bloodline family that, again, you have no choice in sort of quote unquote belonging to, but you also have another family that that has sort of chosen you and you've reciprocated that. So again, there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of gray area to different kinds of communities. What constitutes a community? Is a society one type of community? Is it the highest form of community? Where does freedom lie between the individual and community and society? Yeah, a lot of stuff to play with.
Yeah, and that is why it's so funny, because it's also a little bit more abstract, and that's part of the fun for being philosophical. I like abstract subjects. So allow me to add everything that I'm learning into it to kind of like play around with the ideas. I encourage you to do the same, even if you feel like it doesn't make sense. There is something there about. But well, Ravi, you're next.
Thank you. Just to respond to you, Ferdinando, and also to respond to Professor Manzi, when you were speaking, I thought of two things. Professor Manzi was asking about, do you make a choice to be part of a community, or are they gatekeepers, so to speak, who kind of say you can be a part of this community or you cannot be a part of this community? A very loose example. Somebody can decide, I want to be a part of the Dallas College community, but as long as you're not a part of Dallas College, no matter what you do or what you want. You're just not a part of that community. So I think with communities, and I'm still struggling with communities and societies, but anyway, with communities, I think there are gatekeepers and there are also barriers to entry. So yeah, that's what I would say for that. And then I'm not sure if this is random or no, but just thinking about society's identity, and I'm looking at the topic here, society's identity. What distinguishes a society from other forms of community and interpersonal relationships? Okay, I'm going to, talk about, societies and identities. Completely random. Over the weekend, I was watching Korean dramas, right? And I was really surprised to see how their mannerisms, some of the norms in their society are very, very much alike to our norms as Southern Africans. I'm Southern African, by the way, from Zimbabwe. But we are seen in a completely different light. Somehow we don't identify with each other, yet we are so similar. So how are societies defining themselves? How are they identifying? How do we identify with each other? Completely random, and I'm just throwing it out there. But yeah, gatekeepers and barriers to entry in terms of being a part of a community. I don't think you make that choice.
Okay, right. I mean, I see what you're trying to say, and it is very fascinating for me, because then it opens up this question, like, why do we even have to set so many type of communities? Like, can we not just make it simple for all of us? It's like, we're just humans, so you're just the human community, and that's it. So why do we have, as a society, or as just individuals, being, I don't know if forced, but thrown into the belief that we need to sectorize, like who belongs where and why. Like, why do we need society as a term? Because that word didn't came by itself. We created it because we needed it to exist. Why? Like, why would it be? Like, why wouldn't be just good enough for us to just be humans? As, for example, you was mentioning, people in Africa have the same or similar practices that somebody in Korea. So if our natural behavior has led us to similar actions, why do we still feel like we need to separate ourselves? So it kind of like goes into the whole aspect of, yeah, sectorization and like individualism. It seems like people are feeling like if you maybe let loose into too many crowd, you could lose your identity and you are not completely sure who you are, maybe. I'm just throwing questions. I'm not saying this is how it is. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, I do believe that it is common to see that people want to do something that lasts the test of time. But if you don't sectorize things, it's harder because it's kind of like, it's just harder. So I think it could play around those lines, maybe around the whole idea of immortality and things. Okay, Robbie, you're next.
Something else completely random. I am a Yuval Noah Harari disciple. I love everything he writes and talks about, and talking about sectorizing and creating an us and them. His theory, and I tend to believe that, is that we created all of it as human beings. We created the differences that are not actually there. If we really dig deep, we are much more similar than we are different. But I guess for the feeling of safety, I suppose, of belonging to a certain cluster, safety of belonging to a certain tribe and having your own rules that work within that cluster and that tribe, we have sectorized, but it's all created. It's all made up.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's my contribution.
Yeah, I agree. Everything is created. I mean, it's not random, but I agree. And before giving the floor to Nancy, Jennifer is texting this. She's saying, I guess I could identify as a member of the wine enthusiast community. But if I wanted to be recognized as an expert in the wine community, I need to belong to the court of master sommeliers or cicerones, if you rather talk about beers. Okay. I mean, yeah, then just in that example, you just have like two different communities, I guess. Those who are just regular members and those who are like the experts. We can even go with the third this beer. Well, yeah, good stuff. Thank you. All right, so Nancy, you're next.
Okay, yeah, great points, Ravi and Fernando. Here we go. Sorry, having technical difficulties. Yeah, I would say this. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
It sounds like, getting back to Ravi's point here about we're more similar than we are different. I wonder about, okay, so I've been trying to sort of suggest subtly that the major influencing and distinguishing factor in societies is government. Now, that doesn't imply, of course, that there's no governing of things whatsoever in communities, generally speaking. It just maybe not so formalized. So what would be maybe the equivalent to a sort of influencing or stabilizing force in communities? Again, it doesn't seem to be geographical space. It seems to be something like culture. So perhaps this is where humans begin to individuate on a more communal level before individuating on an individual level. So it's the influence of culture that might seem to, or the impact of a culture that seems to be the thing that forms a community. It's like the nucleus of the community. So Ravi, when you speak of gatekeepers, I'm not so sure they're necessarily people. They might be customs, traditions, rituals, things along these lines that are upheld generation after generation. But again, this is why, for example, maybe you can even apply this to religion. I was doing it to nationalities, but it's like we could belong to the same religious community without necessarily, again, occupying the same space, but we uphold the same customs, the same rituals, the same traditions. What's fascinating, and this gets back to Fernando's point, is that, again, depending on who you endorse, philosophically speaking, societies did form out of necessity, out of need, for survival, at the very least, and then eventually flourishing. Nowadays, there are so many different societies globally, as well as technological means of traveling there and becoming, part of that society. It seems like the individual can now choose not just, one's own communities, to the extent one can choose, but also one's own society. So it's not about becoming a member of a community, it's about becoming a citizen of a society, which again requires governmental recognition. But yeah, and to finally, just I'll cap it at this. It does seem, most communities, I will say, do seem to take geographical space into account, especially those, okay, maybe communities is the wrong way to put it. From an academic research perspective, if you're talking about demographics, like when you participate in a census or something like that, that does tend to be more geographical based. For example, I live in Dallas and I'm a huge New York Yankees fan. Baseball. So it's like I'm part of the community of Texas Yankees fans. Even though I don't belong to any of like the community Facebook pages or anything like that, because I root for them where I root for them, I'm part of this demographic. But again, demographics are more artificially abstracted things. But okay, yeah, just a quick response. That wasn't quick, but a response.
No, it's okay. All right. But whenever you were speaking about that, Nancy, I was thinking, like something that is happening even more with this globalization and the internet and so on is that, yes, we're creating more communities and more society, but at the same, we are all being more of a member of the same society. I don't know if that makes sense. Like it's like since we have access to so many cultures and traditions just by a click, like we are learning cultures that otherwise we wouldn't, and cultures that are like outside of our reach. Sometimes you don't even have set foot in Italy, and you have many people like all dressed in Italian and all like who, and they speak in the language, and they have never been there geographically speaking. But it is affecting how we relate to others to the point that we, in a sense, like kind of like mm, I don't know if we can say belong, but at the very least, you have created a more global society while still creating even more sectorized, like group of people with different beliefs and so on. So I think for me it's fascinating because I don't think that was possible maybe 30 years ago. Uh, Before, like if you want to belong to something, you have to actually be there. Otherwise, it will be just books and stories, and you can't even practice it. But now, like whatever I'm doing here, if I just send it to YouTube, some people may be in another, like the opposite globe, and yeah, practicing it, like speaking the same, and it would affect because they will be. I think that's what is expanding the whole concept of community, for instance, like because it's this that is not being held physically, but it's being held through and the internet is kind of like around. It's kind of like its own dimension, kind of a deal. Um, I mean, we could say that yeah, it's still geographical, but it is happening through a different practice that it was not possible before. Uh,
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, you could say that maybe there's a new community forming right now through the internet and stuff like that, and it is precisely this global community. But again, do we think that there's a difference between a global community and a global society? When you say global community, I think we could find that sort of I suppose the filament, the common denominator of sorts is the internet, and technologically speaking, our ability to communicate with one another, despite vast geographical differences. When you say global society, it makes me think of the Illuminati. Because again, it's like there's one single. If we're one single society, would there not be one single government? Again, just put it out there, kind of for fun, kind of not. So that's the thing about.
I mean, yeah. But can we really say? I mean, okay, and now I'm just thinking kind of like for fun. Because then, like, if we go with the whole Illuminati kind of a deal, like, then we have somebody who should be leading the efforts. But, like, people are going to be kind of like working on somebody's machinations without knowing. So it's kind of like a type of society where you don't even know who's leading you, you're just being led. Which I guess it is normal as a human being since we were born and most of the time that's why philosophy needs to exist. We just kind of like boom, do this, and you just like a monkey, like yeah, I'm doing this, yeah, and you don't even wonder why. Uh, but you start wondering, then you start like asking questions that kind of like made you doubt why you're doing such things. But we're not sure how it started. We just know it's there. So it is interesting to think. But yes, Ravi, you're next.
Um, when Professor Manzi was saying that, I was thinking we could go down a whole rabbit hole when we are talking about a new society and one society. And I think in a way, it was always like, not always like that, but because of the internet, it kind of erased the boundaries. And now, especially because of the virus, we are all quote unquote suffering the same thing. And when it comes to decisions on how we're going to move forward, it does seem like it is going to be a unified effort, but there's no unified effort without some kind of leadership, right? So Yeah, in terms of becoming one society, I think we're probably going to see a lot with the virus and possible vaccine passports and that kind of order coming into place. It's going to need to be run from somewhere, controlled from somewhere. So I think we are closer to a one world system, a one world order, a one world something than we've ever been before.
Yes, I think it's easier. But this is the thing. Now I'm just thinking for fun. I'm gonna be honest, because the thing is like I believe like the end goal of our society, of our community, is to become global, because that's why conquerors are conquerors. Like they want their idea to be believed everywhere they go. And I think the whole dispute is kind of like a fight between communities and society, like overcome another idea, so their idea is the overarching one. So whenever you're starting to say, Ravi, like it is easier right now to kind of become global, I think it is that way, not just because of the coronavirus. It's because we also, again, with just one click, we can just nuke somebody, so they can die, and boom, and then one less 100 more to go. And everything that we say, everything is so like easy, like fast to reach, that yeah, I think like we are kind of like in that dispute, but I think that dispute like many hundreds of thousands years ago. It's just that before it was low pace, now it's like it's happening every day. Ta, ta, ta. I mean, I'm glad it hasn't happened yet, because it would be weird. I mean, maybe it's just what we need. Maybe just to find somebody, but to get to that point in like you have a a concise leadership, that would be. I mean, if we focus it on how society is today, that would be bloody. Like that would be like okay, that would be like a lot of war, and then it's like okay, we kill 90% of the population, and now it's good. And I think it would be like a short-term fix, if I may, uh, until like more revolutions start like growing up. And I see Mansis next. But before that, I think Ravi is saying that she will be new community will be the salad bowl or melting pot. Yeah, that seems like a solid community to belong to. Yeah, you're next.
It'll be the fondue pot. Um, I wanted to throw out this question too before we wrapped up and everything like that. And I wanted to give it maybe a little time to breathe as well. But so I'm introducing it now. And it's something actually, Fernando, you touched upon at the very beginning. Is it possible, do you think? And again, opening up for everybody to be completely independent or autonomous. Is it possible? Because we talked about, can you belong to communities whether you like it or not? Can you belong to societies whether you like it or not? I mean, if you're born in a country and you become their citizen, you're part of that society. You didn't ask to be. So, we were wondering about the conditions that, again, comprise communities, societies, respectively. Is it possible, therefore, to not belong to any community or any society? Not necessarily asking you, can we think of anybody who qualifies, but just, again, hypothetically, theoretically, would it even be possible? Your thoughts?
Hmm. I think I think there probably was a time where it just kind of happened, but right now it's hardly difficult to see it like being a thing. Um, because I mean, we have our needs regardless of. Maybe you are able to sustain yourself like through food and through sustenance, and maybe you're able to be that kind of like people that is just kind of like a survival in an island. But even then, like, I mean, maybe. I mean, there are monks who spend years just in solitude meditating about their own life. But what would be the point to meditate to be like the next Buddha if you don't have to be Buddha too? You know, like you become a Buddha for yourself, and there is nobody to be Buddha. That seems like a weird, like objective. Like I don't know. It seems I think like maybe you can make it happen, but it would be kind of like pointless because then it will be just for you, and then whenever you die, what happens then? Like unless that was your whole objective, I think I don't know. It maybe depends on different areas. But George is next. Sorry, I was just talking and watching out the groove. But George is next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to go with no to answer Jeff's question. Can you be truly, completely independent? I think the answer is no. The closest thing I can think of is some guy who maybe packs up his stuff and moves to the woods somewhere off the grid, throws away his cell phone, stops paying taxes, never calls his friends or family again, and just kind of, I don't know, hunts deer and fishes and forages for berries and stuff and builds himself a little cabin. So, like, even that guy, right, who completely cuts himself off from society is bringing with him a language, a strategy for building cabins and foraging berries, a strategy for making tools and hunting deer, and a culture and a thought process and everything that he's inherited from living in society. He brings that with him. It's infected him. He can't get away from it. So even if you're by yourself alone and providing for your own needs off the grid somewhere, you brought society with you in a way. So ultimately, no. I think that guy has definitely way separated himself from society than most of us do here living. Well, for me in the Oval Office of the United States, but for the rest of us in like apartments in the city or whatever, we're way more part of society than that hypothetical guy is. But nobody completely escapes culture, society. Bad news? I don't know. Probably not. I think we're made to live together. My 2 cents.
Oh, the commander in chief has spoken. We can't just really say anything else after that.
Yeah, I like that response. And just to give it a little bit more steam. Yeah, I think your point about language is an excellent one. Again, this goes back to a previous meeting we had earlier this semester. So again, the first two monthly themes of the Dallas College Philosophy Club, they were reality and then truth. So, a bit more abstract. Now we're moving into society and then arts, so a bit more concrete. And so, having said that, one of the questions that was raised at a previous meeting was, can you have thoughts without language? And if you want to claim that you can't, which again, many thinkers do, and language itself is a variable. Again, it's contingent upon where you're born, when you're born, to whom you're born. So your language is already saturated in culture, a certain kind of culture that gave rise to that very language that you happen to speak. So all of your thoughts, every single thought you have, even thoughts of objective reality, they're mediated through this language, through this linguistic expression that is itself a product of a particular culture. So yeah, I think your example of the Into the Wild, or one of my favorite works in philosophy is a work called Reveries of a Solitary Walker by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And it deals with something along these lines. We'll say, and he talks about something called the noble savage. Even then, he contends you still have society everywhere. Even the person who's fishing in the reservoir or something, again, it's a reservoir. Or there's some sort of impact environmentally that allowed his food to come to that particular location. So there's really kind of it seems like maybe there's no escaping it. I was looking at the queue in the chat there. And yeah, George agreed. And I saw Jennifer was saying something similar as well. Jennifer, do you want to elaborate, or you could do so in the chat?
Yeah, you can just type. She said lol. She's laughing right now. That's basically. But she don't want to elaborate. She's cool. She's chilling. She has her thoughts. She knows she has them. Like she's correct, so she doesn't have to prove she's humble.
I really
I always encourage you just to say anything. That way you feel more comfortable expressing your ideas. Um,
But
but hmm?
do we feel trapped now if we're considering this idea that, well, belonging to a community, belonging to a society is inescapable? I mean, do you feel now that your freedom is somehow limited, or doesn't that really bother you? You're like, yeah, well, whatever. Because I mean, he's in good company. His points remind me of Hegel, and you remember Hegel, Fernando. This idea, we didn't get to this part of Hegel in our class, unfortunately, but it's this idea that yes, society is far more than simply what it appears to be externally. That the influence of society, and you can even divorce culture from society. Culture is almost a less organized version of society. I mean, it's truly, that's how you're free. You can't be free unless you're free in these confines. So how does one individuate? How do you become an individual? Well, you have to already exist in a matrix of possibilities. And that's why I was kind of questioning, is like, well, are they really possibilities, or are they something that we can't control? Are they circumstances that impose on us? Impose on us?
I mean, yeah, I see it, and I like the whole aspect because I also love languages and stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I think there are different ways. I mean, yes, maybe you receive an initial tools, and your freedom depends on how you use them later. And I think that's why we have at least the blessing of being surrounded with different cultures. Because if you accept those cultures and you keep adding them, I mean, I don't know. You can start like growing to the point that maybe you can just use all these different elements of different communities that fit you as an individual. So it kind of like it gives you more of a choice on how to live life instead of just knowing one way of living and having to submit to it and try to learn things from that perspective alone. So I think like in that case maybe to embrace the lack of freedom from others, you can be free. I'm using English here like very
What is
badly,
happening?
but somebody's sharing the
Are you
screen.
sharing the screen?
Louise is sharing her screen. I could always just fix it. It's very easy. You see?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna share mine, and then that's it. I overrule whatever is happening. Yeah, you see, this is not freedom. You're submitted under my dictatorship. So there you go.
No worries,
All right.
Luis. No worries.
All right. Okay, let me read a couple of chats. So, Osita, I didn't saw you coming. Hello, Osita. I would be maybe call a society as whatever the geopolitical division is defined as that time, i.e., city, city-state, county, etc. Whomever laws you're subjected to, everything else is more of a community. Every imperialist dream has been a global society. I can't say whether or not that is a good thing, but I tend not to agree with imperialists. Then Jennifer says, unless someone is dumping a child in the woods and it somehow survived on its own, George nailed it. I mean, yeah, we can say that. Then I think George wanted to speak again. But by saying also, if the escape is terrible, it's not called being trapped. You wanted to expand on that idea?
Yeah, that was back to Jeff's question, like, should we feel okay about the fact that we can't really get out of society? Like, is that a bad thing, maybe? And I would say no, that's probably not something we need to worry about. First of all, we can't escape from society, but even if we could, let's talk about, man versus wild over here. That's a really lonely existence. We're not really, I don't think God made us to be alone like that, where we have nobody to talk to, nobody to love, nobody to help, nobody to share our lives with. And as soon as you have one other person sharing with you, you've made society. Congratulations. So, like, escaping from society, if the alternative is bad, then I don't think we should think of ourselves as trapped here in society. Now, I think we could become trapped in society if we are trapped in an unjust society, a really broken, messed up society where the truth cannot prevail and people's freedoms get trampled on. But the solution to being trapped in a bad society is not to leave all society, but to actually live in a good and just society. So, Man in the Woods hasn't really made his situation in life better by leaving society. He's not really escaped. What we need to do is live in a good or just society, and I think that is how we would escape being trapped. So society is not the problem. It's whether or not we have a good or a bad society. And of course, we're not going to get to the perfect society, I don't think, this side of Jesus coming back and fixing things. That's my religious perspective. But we can have some that are worse than others for sure.
Yeah,
And
I mean
yeah,
that was my next question. Like, if we think that that's even a possibility to create a society so perfect that it is good for every member in it. Because I mean, some people want something so different that, like, no matter how good you do it, some people will feel that society to be not good for them. So they're gonna be like, I'm trapped into this and I have no freedom, while others are as free as they can be. And they're gonna be like, yeah, this is this is the dream. So yeah, you
mhm.
did bring a very good purpose there. Uh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
great
think
point.
this age, we are not going to have a perfect society. Like you said, there are some people who are going to be unhappy. Things are just not going to work right. My religious perspective, one day I am hoping and looking forward to a day when things are fixed for good, period. Um, but I don't think we're going to be the ones to bring that about, unfortunately.
mm, okay, I mean, well, we can always just help that from happening,
Yeah,
doing
some
our
are
or
closer than others, like I was saying. Like there's definitely some things about society that could be better and some that could be worse. Like it's not all just a wash.
yeah, yeah, could be worse, yeah. But again, I will continue reading the chat. So then Osita said, a child can't survive without nurturing beyond just nutrition. It's like we need society to live. Um, okay. Then we have Ravi. Is our freedom limited because we cannot escape society? The question is, what is freedom? Oh, we go into that question. I think freedom exists in varying degrees, but no one is 100% free. We live with sanctions and rewards tied to most of our actions, even actions towards self like eating healthily. Louise was saying sorry, she was trying to do a screenshot. I can take a screenshot for you. You can always just ask. And you're like, cling, and then see. I mean, I do screenshot normally, so I can have like a gallery of the things I'm doing. So I can help you with that. Don't worry about it. Then we have Jennifer. I have to live in society because I haven't yet learned how to make beer on my own. Great point. Great point indeed. Then we have Eva. Some people explicitly think society or any kind of rule is infringement of human rights, and those people will never be happy. Same thing with people that are wholly idealistic because neither is willing to accept compromise. And then Osita said, George is killing it. Tu, 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 tu. Except I will be more optimistic. I will also say that even if you are alone in the woods, you're subject to the laws of nature. And if you don't follow those laws, you will die. Is that more optimistic? Please. I need to reassess my definition of optimism. Good Lord. But you do bring a good point that I don't think we have talked about it. Oh my God, you should have bring that up earlier. Like, yeah, because we're talking about this whole community as a human beings, but we're still living, under the nature. So could we then assess, like, the society limits just to human beings could be just a society where, like, I mean, from time to time animals help each other, and we have experienced that before. So we can maybe consider, like, is society banned just to human beings, or can it be also animals there? Yeah, as long as they do their shares and they pay taxes, I guess. Who knows? They could pay taxes. Why not? If I pay taxes, they should too. So then Jennifer says, maybe I develop another personality and just keep myself company or make friends with the animals like Mowgli. Hmm. But again, it's the whole society. You're creating one in which you are the human being and then you're just surrounded by a lot of Mowglis. So yeah, we never consider the nature aspect of this question. So my goodness. All right.
I love those.
Good stuff.
Those points. Yeah, I mean, I think the laws of nature point, I think is it's an interesting one because it makes us even consider further, what constitutes a community. I mean, there are laws of physics, laws of nature, under which any community or society has to reckon with before it can, stabilize itself or form. I also like the point, Ava's point, because again, this reminds me of Hegel, where the idea is that rules and laws are in place for the sake of allowing the individuals of that society to enhance their freedom collectively alongside one another. So rules aren't necessarily a bad thing. Societies aren't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, you might say they're necessary for your happiness. Again, maybe that's a controversial statement, but I think based upon today's discussion and what we're seeing in the chat, it's a logical one to conclude. Is the philosophy club a society or community?
Well, it depends. I mean, are we seeing just an alternative figure? If so, then no, completely community. Yeah, like no power whatsoever. So yeah. I mean, asking George's point, of course. Yeah, like if I have a dog or something, they will pay in taxes for me. I make them work on the street, like, hey, go do your shares and then bring me some food. And then, yeah, that will be taxes. Jennifer is saying that she's pretty libertarian. She'd rather as little government as possible. And then we are a community of thinkers, according to Rabbi. Are we? Are we? Are we just saying what we have been taught, and we're not thinking for ourselves?
We do
I
have
don't
a
know.
government.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm just a monarch figurehead. Fernando really runs.
Yeah. I mean, more like maybe you can try to be like a monarch, kind of like in the French area, but that would be an optimistical way, according to Osita. You will be like,
Fernando's gonna
with no
execute.
head.
To me.
Vive la France! Ah,
All right,
oh,
y'all.
well.
That about concludes it. Anybody have any final thoughts or anything else you want to throw out there? All right, cool. And if not, again, just a shout out. I meant to do this up top, but shout out to everybody who joined us for the film series that happened the Wednesday before spring break. That was a lot of fun. Food Inc. It was a really, really interesting documentary, pretty thought-provoking. And I love the conversation afterwards. If you're curious about a conversation, again, you can find it on the YouTube page. Search Dallas College Philosophy Club. It's under the film series playlist. Also, again, circling back around to the opening announcements. Yeah, the call for submissions for the Dallas College Philosophy Undergraduate Student Conference is officially out there on our Teams page. It's going to be shared far and wide as well. But y'all get first dibs being part of the club, which I guess a club is a community. But yeah, feel free to, again, share this with other people you might know. Again, you don't have to be taking a philosophy class right now if you'd like to present. You don't have to present a paper. We like all kinds of creative presentations. In the past, we've had people present, they sang songs, they did spoken word poetry, they did regular poetry. We've had people act out little scenes in the past as well. So it could be very creative, as well as, of course, PowerPoints and essays. Those are welcome too. So again, you can find that in our files section. If you have friends who are interested in philosophy, and even if they go to a different college, they can still submit a proposal to present. So yes, be on the lookout. I'll be reminding you all weekly at these meetings, as well as email reminders and Instagram stuff as well. But yeah, give it some consideration. There's not a lot of opportunities to present at conferences as an undergrad, especially at the community college level. But this is a very professional conference. It's if you're curious about maybe going into academia or dabbling in greater scholarly industry, this is a good chance to sort of get your feet wet. And again, it's virtual. So you can do so from the comfort of your own home. I highly recommend it. And of course, you could just come and hang. We're going to be there for hours, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can come and go as you please. It'll be right here on this Teams page. And check us on social media platforms.
Yeah. Also, if you just want to debate an idea with somebody you know, you can also do that. It's very you don't necessarily have to do like a research paper to present there. It can be just your experience in life. So it's way easier than it may look on the outside just because it has the conference there on the name. Yeah, I encourage you to participate. Josita did wrote something on the chat. He's saying, by the way, I was referencing the experiment done in the Romania, I believe, decades ago, where one newborn was fed and given love and played with and talked to, while another was just given food but kept alone in a room, and the nurses wasn't even allowed to look at the baby in the eye, much less talk to it. The neglected baby died, even though it had plenty of nutrition. Some more information about this conference is on the Teams page. He's asking. Yes. So if you're not completely sure how to get access to it, we do have some like homepage before joining this call. You're supposed to just go to like philosophy and then you see like I'm gonna share my screen. It's just easier for those visual learners. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I might as well. So poop. I don't know how much you can see. Uh, poop. Second. It's gonna take some time. There you go. So if you're seeing something here, if even my computer is at, aha, there you go. So normally you will be here in post. This is the original setting. Again, my computer is being slow. You will be seeing something like this. All you have to do is go into the files, like window or whatever. You click there, and you're gonna see there the list of topics we already have decided. We have different type of informations, and as you can see, Mansi here, like 3 hours ago, he posted, uploaded some documents for you. This is all something that you can use and watch. This is normal information that is good for you. However, try to avoid editing it because if you edit it there, it will be edited for everyone. So just read and learn, but not write and erase. That would be my call for you. But that's basically how you can get access to different type of information that we're sharing with you. I hope this makes sense. And as always, if you want more information about the meetings or topics, even just to talk up with the officer team so you can learn a little bit more about like philosophy in general, or maybe help receiving help with your classes, just send me your email and I will get you into the list of the mailing list, and that you will be taken care of. And I think that's about it. If there is nothing else to be added, then I guess you are free to try to escape from this community by maybe building some fences and trying to see if you can succeed.
Thanks for coming, y'all. A lot of fun.
Yeah,
We'll be back next week.
you too. Bye bye. Let me stop recording. Yeah.